Welcome back to Consider This. Melisa and Shaarad here with you tonight, and we are chatting to Ganesh Kumar Bangah, who is a champion of the ICT Productivity Nexus under the Malaysia Productivity Blueprint. So Ganesh, the idea of increasing productivity within the ICT sector, all of this is to drive the digital economy. You mentioned earlier there's been a lot of focus on the digital economy in Budget 2020. So talk to us a little bit about where you see the current state of Malaysia's digital economy adoption versus where you're hoping it's going to be within the near future.
So I think one of the drivers is e-commerce. And if you look at e-commerce today, about 6% of retail today actually is done online. Right? And if you go back 5 years, that was close to 1%.
We just had Singles Day, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
And then we're going to have Black Friday and whole Cyber Monday and all that.
But 6% sounds so
it's
small.
still pretty low because in more developed countries like China and India, it's close to 20%.
Okay.
Right? But it's still a lot of room for growth. But we are heading in the right direction. And e-commerce and the digital economy really will start growing when we hit the inflection point. And I think we have hit the inflection point.
Oh, you think we have?
We definitely have hit that inflection point.
What would be an indicator of that? I mean, to kind of explain to our audience, what is it that you're looking at to suggest that?
So I think growth rates is important. Now, when you hit the inflection point, you tend to have more than double-digit growth rates, right? So you have more than double-digit growth rates, then that flattens to a double-digit growth rate. And if you look at over the last 4 to 5 years, we had more than double-digit growth rates when it comes to e-commerce. 1 to 6%. For the next 4 to 5 years, they're expecting that the e-commerce parcel increase will actually be 20% year on year. Right? So we're expecting e-commerce expecting to grow 20% year on year for the next 5 years.
So that's probably, I guess, as you talked about the inflection point, it has to do also with smartphone penetration within within our country. But when it comes to, I guess, the ecosystem, the infrastructure built for e-commerce, being a conducive environment for e-commerce, what would your comment be? Are we a conducive business environment to grow e-commerce?
I believe there's been a lot of progress over the last 4 to 5 years, which is why we've kind of reached the inflection point, or we have reached the inflection point. If you look at our logistics services, they've improved substantially over the last few years. Payment services, we have so many different kinds of payment services. E-wallets is getting very prevalent. So we now have the infrastructure of business environment to actually promote e-commerce, and that's why it's growing. And our consumers, especially our younger generation, is quickly adopting this. Like buying online is becoming second nature to them.
Right.
So in your work, I mean, you see the potential, obviously. Question is, what are the headwinds for this? I mean, what are the challenges, and how can your work and the work of the stakeholders that you represent change that dynamic? How do you address them?
I think the biggest challenge for our local industry is the fact that as e-commerce becomes more prevalent, whether consumers are going to be buying from locals or foreigners.
Right.
Right? So as e-commerce becomes more prevalent, globally, cross-border commerce is becoming even more prevalent. So today you can buy something from China quite easily on Lazada. So how do you make sure that our SMEs are the ones that are supplying to our consumers, and it's not the Chinese SMEs or the Indonesian SMEs that are supplying to them? So that's a war.
Right.
Right?
I mean, philosophically though, I mean, if we want open borders and we want our SMEs to sell in foreign countries, shouldn't we also be equally agnostic about where we get our stuff up, as long as it's good quality?
We should be. But the challenge really is that if the foreign SMEs are better knowledge or better educated, have the right talent to actually market to consumers and know how to adopt these technologies better than our local SMEs, then we will lose, our local SMEs will lose out. So that's where we need to ensure that our local SMEs are able to adopt the right skill sets to actually compete against global SMEs. I'm not saying we should close our borders. I'm just saying we must make sure we are as knowledgeable and are ready to compete with foreign SMEs and foreign players as well.
Where do you see the gap in the market? I mean, clearly you are within the space, you've been watching it for a while. we're never going to compete with China for mass-produced items. We're never going to compete in that cost or that space.
Yes.
But where do you see Malaysia's SMEs perhaps grabbing a slice of the pie?
So I think Indonesia will be a big market for us. So you know, e-commerce penetration across the e-commerce market in Southeast Asia is expected to grow from something like, actually Google Temasek 2 years ago did a report, and they said it's going to grow from 25 billion 2 years ago to 100 billion by 2025. They recently reviewed those numbers, and it's now something like 30 billion.
Wow.
And it's going to grow to like over 100, I think it was 118 billion or something. And the fastest growing market is actually Indonesia. And our proximity to Indonesia, our cultural assimilation to Indonesia means we will be able to supply a lot of our products, whether it's halal products or other type of products, to that huge market. So that's a market we should be focusing on as we expand, right? The growth is not in China. The growth of consumer demand for e-commerce and the digital economy is not in China. The growth is in Southeast Asia. That's why you see so many Chinese companies now focusing on Southeast Asia, and investing here, right? Alibaba's investing here, Tencent's investing here, all the large players. They're not staying in China, they're coming over here. And even more, they're coming to Indonesia. The big question is our local industries, our SMEs ready to adopt that?
I do want to ask about our local SMEs. I mean, you say, as you rightly pointed out, they're kind of backbone of our economy, but they're not known to be the employers of great talent necessarily, right? I mean, the question is why? Why aren't they investing in talent, quality talent for their own future? Why isn't it that they are, not the ones making these initiatives, and it seems to be coming from the National Malaysian Productivity Corporation and such, which are government.
I think the SMEs are starting to see the need of this type of talent. The only issue is, if you talk about technology, the first thing coming to mind of a SME is I need to hire a programmer. Right? I need to hire a programmer to develop something. I need to hire a tech guy to develop something. But that's not the challenge today. Today, developing a software, or developing a product, or developing a website, anybody can do it. Your key success factor is not developing the website to sell or developing the e-commerce store to sell. You have Shopify, you have so many different apps. The key success factor is actually your go-to-market strategy. It's how you take your product and take it to market. It's digital marketing, it's performance marketing, it's influencer marketing, right? And
that's the soft stuff, right? Where creativity and design.
Not really. When it comes to the online industry or the internet industry, that's not soft. That's actually analytics, right? Marketing today,
big data and stuff.
Big data. Marketing today is all about analytics.
Well, Ganesh, in the last minute that we have left, could you just wrap up? I'm sure there are a lot of viewers watching who are perhaps involved in SME. What words would you have for the mass champion of the ICT Productivity Nexus to perhaps embrace a new world of digital?
Sure. I think SMEs in Malaysia have to quickly embrace tech and not to be too scared about it. Get beyond the buzzwords and focus on what digitalization can do to help their business in terms of increasing revenue and reducing costs. And by that virtue, increasing productivity.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show. That's all the time we have on the show. And consider this tonight. Shaarad and I will be back with another episode with you 10 p.m. same time tomorrow. We'll see you then. Signing off.